Veganism is for everyone. It's not just for elite athletes. It's not just for intellectuals. It's not just for people who get a PhD in nutritional science. The barrier to entry is really, really low, and there are some incredibly stupid people who become vegans. And that's a good thing. The movement would have no future if it were only for refined intellectuals. It would have no future if it were only suitable for research scientists who are devoting themselves to keeping up with the latest academic literature, latest findings about protein and enzymes and what have you. And it would have no future if it were limited to elite athletes and bodybuilders, okay? Veganism is for everyone. And that means you and you and you, and it means the stupidest people among us. It means people who are struggling with mental health issues and and the philosophical insights that are required to really understand veganism ethically and ecologically, a child is capable of coming to those conclusions. A very stupid person can figure it out just in a few minutes or a few hours of talking back and forth, right? There are some philosophical conclusions, there are some areas of philosophy that remain perpetually inconclusive, that remain forever open to debate, where there's more than one equally valid perspective or conclusion you can come to. And veganism is not like that. I would really compare veganism to something as simple and fundamental and inexorable and inevitable as making pedophilia illegal. Right? I have had debates with people in real life who disagreed with me on that. And I made a video recently on YouTube drawing attention to the fact that there really was this kind of fad on the left wing, that there were left-wing philosophers and famous published authors, people like Simone de Beauvoir, people like Jean-Paul Sartre. There were famous left-wing people who were pro-pedophilia. You can check out that video. It's mind-blowing. It's hard to believe that really happened, but it did. It's a real part of the history of left-wing politics and academic philosophy. And the fact that they were so wrong about that issue, it really shows that you can't trust their judgment on any issue whatsoever. Because I genuinely think the correct conclusion, i.e. the conclusion that pedophilia must be illegal, even if you start off with some total lack of knowledge, total lack of thought as to the real-world consequences or ramifications, any two people can sit and talk that through. And whether it's in a few minutes or a few hours or over a few days, there is only one correct conclusion you can possibly come to. There really isn't like a whole range of equally valid perspectives on that issue. So the fact that many of these influential philosophers and political leaders on the far left, the fact that they were in this strange, detached, rational way, pro-pedophilia, that utterly discredits them. It calls into question their ability to reason through anything else. Now, the fact that those people also supported Joseph Stalin, the fact that those people made excuses for mass murder, the fact that they said what they said about a whole range of issues in the left wing, that also should call into question to what extent they are sane or insane. But when we're talking about the fundamental questions of veganism, we are talking about something that simple. And for that reason, no matter how stupid you think John Venus is, his stupidity is really irrelevant to the question we're asking here, because you don't need any intelligence to come to the correct conclusion. We use this term cherry picking a lot in 21st century English. It's often frustrating and difficult to explain to a friend or a colleague who speaks English as their second language what it is we really mean by cherry picking. The term is somewhat overused. And the problem with people like John Venus is not truly cherry picking. It's monomania. Cherry picking, properly speaking, is when someone reads the whole Bible and then they just select certain passages from the Bible that favor their own philosophy, favor their own perspective on life, that reinforce their own worldview. They're ignoring some passages of the Bible and selecting others, like someone who goes to a cherry tree and only chooses the cherries they want. And they may even deny that those passages to the contrary. So, for example, the debate on slavery, there were people who were pro-slavery and there were people who were anti-slavery, and they read the same Bible and they were picking different. That's cherry picking. All right? Monomania. John Venus may point out that vitamin B12 is lacking in a vegan diet. Now, I actually have my own perspective on that. I actually very much disagree with that point he's making. There was a study done in Israel where they looked at every ethnic group in Israel. That includes people who are ethnically and culturally Iraqi, people who are ethnically and culturally Egyptian. Like, you might think all Israelis have a lot in common, but in terms of their diet and nutrition, people who were born and raised in Russia and then migrated to Israel don't have a lot in common with people who were born and raised in Iraq and then migrated to Israel. So they're people with very different diets. They looked at all these segments of the population. They were assuming they would find very different problems with B12, with B vitamin deficiencies. And no, everyone had B12 deficiencies and had nothing to do with veganism. It was like, guess what? There were really high rates of B12 deficiency among all these people who eat all kinds of different meat on all kinds of different diets. It's actually a problem for everyone on planet Earth. There was another study, real well-funded government research study in Venezuela. They had a certain hypothesis about who would and who wouldn't have problems with B12 deficiency in Venezuela. And guess what? Everyone had problems with B12 deficiency. It wasn't just the rich. It wasn't just the poor. It wasn't just the people who lived on the coast and ate more fish and the people who lived away from the coast and ate more chicken and pork and whatever. None of these people were vegan. They're eating all kinds of different diets. And they all are struggling with B12. So B12 deficiency is a problem for human beings on planet Earth. Is it especially a problem for vegans? In my opinion, having looked at scientific research, not really. It's such an endemic, widespread problem. Everyone needs to be supplementing their diet with B12, and it may well be that in the future, processed foods have more and more B12 added to them the same way we add iodine to salt to ensure that people are getting exposed. There have been serious proposals in Europe to add B12 to toothpaste so that you're getting small amounts of B12 every time you brush your teeth because it can enter... Regardless, someone like John Venus will develop monomania for a single issue. He'll fixate on a single factor like the vegan diet lacks B12. Even if that were true, even if this were some crucial, unique problem with the vegan diet is that there's no B12 in it, does that mean that eating beef and pork doesn't cause heart attacks? Does that make all of the other health concerns about a diet that includes beef and pork and chicken and cheese and milk, does that mean that none of them matter anymore? You see, it's not cherry picking. It's not that he's picking out a few facts here and there that favor his view of the world and we're all reading the same studies and picking... No. It's that he fixates on one point, one fact, one factor, one issue, and then utterly ignores everything else. And it is a mania. Right? Now, I've had a number of positive discussions with another YouTuber, Savvy Menka. She now uses the name Savannah Stanhope. But if you're vegan, you might remember her as Savvy Menka. She and I were friends way back in the day, like 4 or 5 years ago, and then we didn't talk for a while, and now we're talking now. And I really give credit to her. She's responded very warmly and appreciatively to the criticism I've shared with her, because I'm vegan and she's ex-vegan. All right? Are there benefits to eating meat? The problem is not the benefit or the lack of benefit. The problem is this attitude of monomania in relation to the benefits. The problem is looking at that benefit and then ignoring all of the other facts and factors to the contrary. What do you get when you eat meat? You get a ton of protein, you get a ton of salt, you get a ton of fat with zero fiber. Now, for most people, zero fiber is a bad thing. You've probably heard this. Most doctors are saying you should be eating tons of fiber all the time, okay? Fiber isn't easy to digest. There are people with really serious digestive problems, serious ailments, whether that's Crohn's disease or whether that's, something else, savvy. I'm not sure exactly what condition she is. She has serious digestive issues, including celiac disease. There are people for whom it feels good subjectively, for whom it feels like a relief to be able to get a ton of protein, a ton of fat. I don't think the salt helps, but anyway, and to get that with no fiber in this form that is, in terms of how it feels, easy to digest. Your body doesn't struggle with breaking down the fiber, and that disperses in your belly. And look, I'm cursed with a very accurate memory. I remember what it was like to eat beef. I remember what it was like to digest it, and so on and so forth. Right? So there is a kind of perceived benefit there. And if you have certain digestive problems, you may perceive it more. And if you're used to eating a vegan diet that has an incredibly high level of fiber, suddenly reducing that fiber intake can definitely feel like a relief in your digestion. All right, I can recognize this. All right, I can also recognize that there are sources of B12 that meat eaters have that vegans don't have. B12 deficiency is still endemic to planet Earth. Still was okay. The problem is the monomania of fixing on these advantages you may derive, whether they be objectively real or not. Like, it may just be subjective. It may just be a feeling. It may just be that you feel good when you eat this meat and you get a ton of fat and a ton of protein and this zero fibers. Okay. Do you think that one fact or that one factor, even if we accept it as a fact, do you think that that means that the mountain of evidence about heart attacks, about strokes, about the effects of cholesterol, not just on the circulation of blood in your body, but the effects of cholesterol on the circulation of blood in your brain, do you think that all of that means nothing now? Do you think that nothing else matters now that you've found this one factoid, whether that's about B12 or whether that's about how your condition that may be Crohn's colitis or maybe just miscellaneous digestive problems, the fact that your digestive problems feel better when you switch to eating meat, when you switch to eating eggs, do you think that means that there's a mountain of evidence about nutrition and health science suddenly doesn't matter, that it suddenly means nothing? That is monomania. That's an obsession with this one thing that's leading you to disregard all else. And the other side of that coin obviously has to do with ethics. The fact that you may feel you have this benefit whether it's perceived or real from eating meat, does that mean that you have no responsibility for the pollution of lakes, rivers, and oceans? Does that mean you have no responsibility for the suffering you're inflicting on animals? And if so, what does that tell us about you? The choice of eating a vegan diet, something a child can understand. It's not terribly deep. It's not terribly profound, as I said at the beginning of this video. Okay? But the real choice is, what kind of person do you want to be? I'm asking you, I'm inviting you to be the kind of person who takes responsibility for the consequences of your actions, who takes responsibility for things that happen far away from what you can see and feel and smell yourself. Because I know how easy it is to go to the grocery store and buy a blob of red meat, and it's not even bloody. There's no skin on it. There's no fur on it. You don't hear screams. You don't smell what goes on at the slaughterhouse, right? I know how easy our society makes it. It's very different from when I was living in Laos and Cambodia, and you saw the pig bleeding to death, and you heard its screams, and you literally could see the blood flowing down to the river and polluting the river, and you saw the animals like cows and so on pooing in the river, how raising herds of cattle was directly polluting the source of water that you had to drink and bathe in. Okay, all that is out of sight and out of mind. But if there are two types of people in this world, they're the people who care about the consequences of their actions, and there are the people who don't. I'm not just asking you to choose a vegan diet. I'm asking you to choose what kind of person you want to be.